Hi, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thank you so much for joining us. I'm so excited to have you, and if you're returning, welcome back. I'm excited to see you again. On my channel, we talk about a true crime story on Tuesdays, and then on Saturdays, I try to throw in something that's like strange history or paranormal or conspiracy theory or something along those lines. So if that's something that you might be interested in, you can go ahead and hit the little subscribe button down below, as well as the bell icon so you can be notified when I upload. I do want to give a quick warning that some of the things that we talk about on this channel can be pretty heavy. So if that is something your mental health cannot handle, just do me a favor and click off this video and I will catch you somewhere else. But your mental health will always be so much more important than any YouTube video ever will be. So with all of that being said, let's go ahead and jump into today's story. Today's story is infuriating and it's just extremely frustrating. I stumbled upon it a couple of days ago, actually. I hadn't heard of the story before a few days ago, and when I started looking into it, I was just so angry by the end of it, and so I don't want to say I'm looking forward to hearing what you guys are going to say, but I'm really interested in what you guys are going to say about it. Today we're going to be talking about Denise Amber Lee. Denise was born on August 6th of 1986. Her parents were Rick and Sue Goff. Rick was retired, but he had been a sergeant at the Charlotte County, Florida Sheriff's Department. Growing up, Denise was one of those people who was just kind and loving and just a beautiful soul. And I know in true crime, they always talk about how good and wonderful these people are. In my experience researching all of these cases, it really seems to me like these kinds of things only happen to really kind and loving humans, and it's the most tragic thing ever. But Denise really was. She was one of those girls who was just kind and loving, but she was also kind of quiet and more reserved. She was a self-proclaimed bookworm, and she was also involved in like math stuff. She was very intelligent, especially in math. During her senior year of high school, Denise met a boy named Nathan Lee. Nathan could not have been more opposite of Denise. He was the jock, he was a jokester, he enjoyed having a good time with his friends. He definitely wasn't the quiet type that liked to stay at home like Denise, but Denise and Nathan hit it off just incredibly well. They started spending a lot of time together and very soon they fell in love. Not long into their relationship, Nathan bought Denise a heart-shaped ring for $40. And this was just a very small token of his love to her, but this became Denise's most prized possession. She wore it every single day and she was so very, very proud of this ring. It didn't take very long for Denise and Nathan to get married and start a family of their own. Denise and Nathan would have 2 children of their own. They were both little boys and they were just the happiest of couples and they just loved their family. Denise was very quick to sacrifice all of her personal time and her fun time. She would much rather stay at home with her boys than go out and be with her friends, even though she was just 21 years old. Denise was a very dedicated mother to her 2 children, and it was like she just fell into motherhood so easily, and she was just born to be a mother. In order to provide for the family, Nathan actually worked 3 different jobs sometimes. Kind of seasonally, he would pick up a third thing here and there, but his main job was working at the electric company as a meter reader, and he would also work at a grocery store stocking shelves just so that they could make ends meet, and Denise stayed home with their 2 children. The couple rented a modest home that they were very comfortable in and really seemed like they enjoyed, but they had a dream of buying their own home, and that is what they were saving up to do. They wanted to buy their own home, and they were actually very close to getting into a home of their own. But since Nathan was out of the house so often providing for his family, he would often call throughout the day just to see what Denise and the kids were up to. On January 17th of 2008, it was no different. It was a very typical day for the family. Nathan and Denise woke up. Nathan got up, got ready, and went to work, and Denise was home with her boys. Around 11 a.m., Nathan called Denise just to kind of see what was going on. And during their conversation, Denise told Nathan that she had shut off the AC to help save a little bit of money, and Nathan told Denise to open the windows. She told Nathan that she had already opened up the windows, but it was still pretty stuffy in the house. Nathan continued the conversation, was just listening to his kids in the background and talking to Denise before he had to go back to work. Nathan then went about his day as usual, and he got off at 3 p.m. He did have a 25-minute commute from his work back to his house, but during this commute, he would usually call Denise to see what was going on. But on January 17th of 2008, when he called Denise on his way home from work, Denise didn't answer this time. He called her again, and when she didn't answer again, he just felt like something was off. He continued to try to call her over and over on his 25-minute drive home, but she did not answer, not once. When Nathan finally made it home, he pulled into the driveway and noticed that the windows were shut, even though Denise had told him that she had opened the windows earlier to let a breeze in. When he walked into the house, he started calling for Denise and looking for her, but she was not in the house and she would not answer any of his calls. Finally, he walked into their boys' room, and that's when he noticed both of their boys were sleeping in the same crib, which was very strange because Denise never would have done that. He also noticed that Denise's keys, wallet, and phone was still in the house, and if Denise would have left the house, she would have taken those things. And then upon further examination, he noticed that the windows were closed, but they had not been latched. This was very unlike Denise. She never would have done this, and that's when Nathan knew that something was very wrong. Nathan picked up the phone and called Denise's mother and asked if she had seen Denise, and when she said she hadn't, Nathan knew something was wrong, so he hung up the phone and immediately called 911. So if you remember, Rick Goff was actually a retired sergeant from the Charlotte County Sheriff's Office, and so he had a little bit of a way in to get an investigation going a little bit quicker when it came to Denise. It did not take long for police officers to arrive to the Lee house and start examining things. They noticed that there was no forced entrance into the house, but Denise was in fact gone. There was nowhere she could have gone. It also didn't take long for a massive search to start for Denise. They had helicopters, they had dogs, they had people on foot looking everywhere for Denise, and police officers started going door to door to see if any of the neighbors had seen anything suspicious. And as luck would have it, one of the Lee's neighbors had seen a green Camaro driving around the community around 1:30 that afternoon. The neighbors said this was suspicious because the car had driven past their houses like 4 or 5 times at this point. And so the neighbor is starting to realize that there is something very strange going on. So she steps out to make her presence known to let the driver of this Camaro know that she can see him. It is when she makes eye contact with the driver that he finally pulls into the Lee's driveway. At this point, the neighbor figures that the driver was just lost and had finally found the house that he was trying to get to. So she goes back into her house and continues watching TV. But the whole encounter doesn't sit right with her, so she decides to go back outside about 15 minutes later, and that's when she notices that the green Camaro is pulling out of the Lee's, Denise's, and Nathan's driveway. All of this happened between 2:30 and 2:45. The neighbor was able to give a detailed description of the driver, which would really come in handy later. So in 2008, law enforcement was still using something called a teletype, and this was a way for law enforcement agencies to send out bolos, or be on the lookouts for people. This is outdated technology at this point. This is no longer used, but during that time, that's how they would get their bolos out and information out to other law enforcement agencies like in other counties. So around the same time, the sheriff's office sent their teletype operator away. So this would just leave dispatch to be working that evening. And the teletype operator that was sent home was in the next county over, and this would become very significant later. So around 5 p.m., the Northport, where Denise and Nathan lived, the Northport Police Department sent out a teletype, a description of the suspect that the neighbor had seen, and also a description of Denise. So here's where all the 911 calls start coming in, and these are extremely important, and this is where the case gets very frustrating. Around 6 p.m. that same evening, the 911 operators get a phone call from a girl named Sabrina Muxlow. Sabrina is calling the sheriff's office to tell them about an experience that her father had. Sabrina's father, Harold Muxlow, told her his cousin had come over to borrow a shovel, a gas can, and a flashlight. Harold gave his cousin these items, and when he was walking towards the car, which happened to be a green Camaro, he noticed that his cousin was kind of shoving somebody back down into the car, and he could hear someone yelling, "Call the police." His cousin had told Harold that his lawnmower was stuck in the mud in his house. So after he saw his cousin kind of pushing someone down and heard this voice saying, "Call the police," he started walking towards the car a little further, and I was asking his cousin, like, "Hey, what's going on?" His cousin told him, "Hey, don't worry about it," and then he drove off. This whole situation didn't sit right with Harold, so he decided to go to his cousin's house and see if there really was a lawnmower stuck in the yard, and when he got there, there was no lawnmower and his cousin wasn't there. This whole situation just didn't feel right to him, so he drove back home, but instead of calling 911, he told his 17-year-old daughter Sabrina about it, and then Sabrina was the one to call 911. Harold's cousin name was Michael King. So Michael King had once been a pretty respected member of his community. He didn't have a very high IQ. He wasn't a very intelligent man, but he had trained himself to be a very decent plumber that people actually sought out to come and work in their homes. Michael had also been married, and they had a son together who was 12 years old at the time, but he was currently divorced and he was taking care of his 12-year-old son. Michael's house was currently being foreclosed on as well, so it seemed like he had some money troubles that he was dealing with. But on top of that, his family said that when he was younger, he had had a sledding accident that left a divot in his brain that seemed to change his personality. But either way, Michael was going through a pretty rough patch in his life, and this seemed to be kind of the catalyst to why he took Denise. But Michael was the one who abducted Denise from her home. So around 6:15 that same evening, the Northport Police Department received another 911 phone call, and this time it was from Denise herself. Denise was able to take Michael's cell phone from him without him knowing and dial 911. So while she's on the phone with the 911 dispatcher, she is trying to speak to the dispatcher while making it sound like she's talking to Michael. So I hope that makes sense. Like, she is having to talk kind of in code the entire time to make Michael believe that she's speaking to him, when in fact she's talking to the dispatcher. Denise was so clever about this. She is able to tell the 911 operator that she doesn't know who took her or where she is. And there's even one point where the dispatcher is kind of letting her know that she can't hear what Denise is saying and asking her to turn the music down. Now again, Michael doesn't know that she is on the phone with the 911 dispatch, and she is able to have Michael turn down the music so that the dispatch can hear her better, and she does this all without Michael knowing that she has called 911. In the 911 call, she talks about her beautiful husband and how she just wants to see her children again. You can find the 911 call on YouTube, but it is absolutely heartbreaking, and I just warn you to listen to it because it's probably one of the saddest things I have ever heard. At the time, police could have traced Michael's whereabouts with GPS location, but Michael still had an older cell phone, the flip phone, so it did not have GPS capabilities, so they were unable to track his phone. They were, however, able to see who the number was registered to, and that's how they found out that it was Michael King that had taken Denise. But about 7 minutes into the 911 call from Denise, it seems like Michael realized that she was calling 911 and the line went dead. So going back to about 6:07, there is another 911 call that comes in, and this time it is from a woman named Jane Kowalski, and I'm very sorry if I said that wrong. Jane is telling the dispatchers that she had come up at a stoplight next to what she said was a blue Camaro, and she said that she got a very good look at the man driving and that she could hear a child screaming in the back of the seat, and she could see a hand pounding on the glass of the window. She said that the suspect was kind of shoving somebody down, and she was worried that she was witnessing a child abduction in progress. Jane stayed on the line with the dispatchers for a while, and she was trying to stay near the Camaro that she saw on the highway. She was trying to stay behind him so that she could get a license plate number, and she was even asking the dispatcher if she should follow him or stay with him. And eventually they get to another stop where she is going ahead of this Camaro, and then he turns onto another road. You can even hear Jane asking the 911 dispatcher if she should turn around and try to follow him, and the dispatcher asks her if she can turn around and try to follow this person. So you've probably guessed that this was Denise in the back of Michael King's car, and you would be absolutely correct. So this would mean that Denise is going to get the help she needs. But the problem is that Jane had just crossed into another county, and so her 911 call was sent to that county's dispatch center and not the Northport dispatch center where all of Denise's 911 information was at in the first place, or all the information that she was missing was at in the first place. On top of that, this was the dispatch center that the teletype operator had gone home early, and so they were not getting the bolos or be on the lookout, so this county didn't really have any information on Denise's abduction at all. And then on top of this, none of the information that Jane gave to this county, none of this information was relayed to the Northport Police Department, which did have all of Denise's information. It was then at 9:15 that a highway patrol officer saw a Camaro that was similar to the one that they were all looking out for. Inside the vehicle, it was Michael King. They also found a muddy shovel and the cell phone that Denise had used to call 911. Both the battery and the SIM card had been taken out of the phone. Michael was also soaking wet from the waist down. Michael was immediately arrested and taken into custody. Upon further investigation into the car, they were able to find Denise's blood and also that ring that Nathan had given her that she loved so much. They were also able to find traces of Michael's semen during an autopsy of Denise's body. Her body was found on January 19th, a couple of days later, on the same road that Jane saw Michael turning down on. A couple miles down that road, she was in a shallow grave on the side of the road. Initially, Michael said that he and Denise had had consensual sex and that both of them had been abducted after this. Michael said that somehow he was able to escape and that they had taken Denise and he didn't know where she was. But all of this would be found to be a lie. It seems like Michael snapped and abducted Denise from her home in broad daylight in front of her children. He then took Denise to his home where he essayed her multiple times and then later murdered her, as we now know. The thing that's so frustrating about this case is that this all could have been prevented and Denise could have been saved had the dispatchers or different 911 centers been in better contact with the sheriff's office. When Jane called 911 and watched Michael turn down that road, there was an officer on that road that was patrolling the area. It would have been so easy for him to get pulled over and stopped right there. Denise should have been saved right then and right there, but nobody knew to be on the lookout for this Camaro or for Denise. Nobody put two and two together that this was Denise being abducted in the back of this car. Michael was convicted of Denise's murder and sentenced to death. He did appeal this conviction, but it was denied in 2012. Nathan would then sue the police department that failed Denise the way they did that day, and he was awarded $1.25 million, which I think was very much deserved. Although I think Nathan would much rather have Denise with him instead to raise their babies together. The dispatchers were suspended without pay, but I feel like the consequences of this should have been so much more. To be a dispatcher is it is a heavy job, but it's such an important job. You are the go-between between the victims and the officers. You are the people that get the emergency responders where they need to be going. This job should be taken so seriously, and I feel like Denise was failed in every way, shape, or form. So many 911 calls came in that night, and at least one of them could have absolutely saved her life with an officer being right there down that same road that Michael turned. but nobody got the information where it needed to go. And because of that, Denise lost her life that night. Nathan lost his beloved wife, and 2 beautiful babies lost their mother. That's really all I have for you today. I would love to know your thoughts down in the comments. What do you think about this? Do you think that Nathan was justified getting the settlement that he did? Do you think that death is a good conviction for Michael? I personally think it is. I think what he did was horrendous and awful, and he is absolutely exactly where he needs to be. But let me know your thoughts down in the comments. But that's all I have for you today. This one is so sad and so heavy, and I don't know really how to end it, so I think I'm just going to end it here. But yeah, if you are interested, just another reminder, you can go ahead and hit the subscribe button down below. And other than that, that's all I have for you. I hope this finds you so safe and so loved and so well, and I will see you next week. Bye.